Get ready, it's time for Motorsports Madness, powered by the staff at Race Chaser Online. Your motorsports, your way, every day. And now, here's your host, Jacob Seelman.
Hi. You'll notice that said host is here, but we're minus a man, so...
We're man down.
I was hoping Allie was going to get where I was going with that. Tom Baker is not at the Angular Table version 2.0 tonight. He is up in Indianapolis at the Performance Racing Industry Trade Show, or PRI, as those of us in the industry know it. But the rest of us are here. Yes, he's in the cold, which is going to unfortunately make its way down here and snow in, well, the whole western half of North Carolina for about a week.
Don't tell me that. Oh, and then we have Cisco.
Yeah, Cisco's got a box. Say hi to the people, Cisco.
I'll say hi to the people once I can get the stream working.
Okay,
it's one of those days.
It's one. So Cisco's going to work on punching buttons, and we'll let Cisco work on punching buttons, and we'll tell you what we're going to do on this show tonight. So for starters, we are going to wrap up the 51st annual Snowball Derby, and to do that, we are going to bring in one of our very good friends to this show from Short Track Scene and Auto Week, Matt Weaver, going to be joining us here in just a couple of minutes to talk all things Snowball. He'll also break down the big breaking news announcement that came out this week. That's sad.
News.
Yeah, you can't do the voice.
Oh.
I have to do the voice, but I didn't do the voice yet because I was waiting for Weaver. But it's okay. So Matt actually had the breaking story that Brett Moffitt is no longer going to be at Hattori Racing. Sad face.
Very sad face.
Yeah.
TRD, I thought you were going to do something about this.
I had my fingers crossed that they were going to, and then they didn't.
So it's another case of Chris Buescher. Do you remember when he won his championship in the Xfinity Series with Roush?
Yeah.
He ended up without a ride the next year, and then he ended up at front row.
He did.
In a Cup car. So
He did.
maybe Brett will end up in a Cup car?
Well, he's been in a Cup car before.
He did run it at front row.
And won Rookie of the Year, no less.
At front row.
Uh-huh. So we'll talk about all that. Weaver has all the ins and outs of that story, and we'll be discussing that with him here in a little bit, and probably get into some state of the sport stuff here as well, because Matt's really good at that stuff, and we can. And there was kind of a Twitter war today that I want to break down with him,
Twitter
too.
War?
Yes, a bit of a Twitter war.
Were you on the Twitter war?
I was not part of the Twitter war, but I was watching the Twitter war. And we'll talk about the Twitter war coming up in a few minutes. Lots of things. Short Track Scene and Auto Week's Matt Weaver joins us in just a moment. This is Motorsports Madness. We'll be right back.
You own a performance car and you know how to drive, but you want to learn real performance driving. Well, Bunky, get that car off the street and onto the track. Summit Point Motorsports Park, the Mid-Atlantic's premier road racing facility, located just over an hour from D.C. in nearby Summit Point, West Virginia, is the place to go. And you'll find that Friday at the track is going to give you what you need. For less than a monthly car payment, you can attend this regularly scheduled one-day instructional event in your street car on one of Summit Point's 3 world-class road racing circuits. You'll receive classroom instruction, skid pad instruction in their cars, including front and rear skid control, and 4 20-minute in-your-car instructional sessions from a professional instructor. Have fun, go fast, and really learn how to drive. Call 304-725-8444 for class schedules and details. That's 304-725-8444. Friday at the track at Summit Point Motorsports Park.
Green light. Hey girl, school zone. I'm getting hungry. Car changing lanes. You want to meet me for pizza? Stop sign. Intersection clear. Yeah, street. Pizza sounds good. Ballin Street? Girlin Street!
It's hard to concentrate on 2 things at once, like texting and driving. Stop the text, stop the wrecks. How will you stop texting and driving? Tell us at stoptextstopwrecks.org. Brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the Ad Council.
Here's an important message from RAD and this station.
Hi, this is Bob Sheehan from Blues Traveler for RAD, recording artists against drunk driving. I like to party just as much as the next guy, maybe even more. But the one thing I won't do after I've had a few is get in the car and drive. Don't blow it. Always choose a designated driver. Remember, music lives, and so should you.
Automotive technicians and auto service trainees, how would you like to work at the beach and perform for one of the best car care centers in the nation? Louis Meineke is now looking for skilled automotive technicians to join their award-winning team. If you're a gearhead that knows his or her stuff, or a young up-and-comer that has the motivation and drive to succeed, then you need to make this call today. 302-827-2054. Lewis Meineke Car Care Center, located in beautiful Lewis, Delaware, offers a highly competitive compensation plan, great benefits, a flexible schedule, and did we mention that you're going to be working at the beach? Plus, there's a signing bonus for the right candidates. Technicians must be ASE certified and have a minimum of 6 years experience. Beginners advance at your own pace in one of several entry-level positions. But whatever you do, don't wait. These jobs will go fast. Call Tim at 302-827-2054. That's 302-827-2054. Lewis Meineke Car Care Center. Rev up your career.
Hi, I'm Noah Gregson, and you're listening to Motorsports Madness on PMN, the Performance Motorsports Network.
we caught Allie off guard. She thought she had time, and then Noah started talking, and she's like, "Oh snap!" She was trying, but hey, it's okay because she got me cookies, so
Yeah,
cookies are totally acceptable. Anyway, that got me totally distracted off the subject of where we ought to be going with this. So without further ado, we are bringing back. He did so well before that we decided to bring him back from Short Track Scene and Auto Week. My friend, Matt Weaver, who, let's just say Matt and I had some fun at the Derby last week. Sup, Weaver?
You know, if you're looking for clarity and if you're looking for order and law to be restored to a radio show, I'm not sure, I'm the guy to provide it.
I didn't ask you to provide clarity. I asked you to come here and help us stir the pot worse.
Oh, I can do that. There have been times that I've been compared to Hulk Hogan on a couple of times. I know at face value that doesn't make a lot of sense, but he's the Hulk stirrer, and that's what I am. I'm the Hulk stirrer. I can stir the pot with the best of them.
Well, I don't say we'll start off by stirring the pot, but we'll start off by commending you for some breaking news that you had this week, which is the subject of where I want to go with this first segment here, because you had the story earlier this week through Auto Week that Brett Moffitt is on the job search again. Sad face, as I said during the opening segment. So
insert crying emoji.
Yeah, yes, Allie's got it right. We need crying emojis for this because less than a month after Hattori Racing and Brett Moffitt win a championship, it's Splitsville. And the thing that I hate about this the worst, Matt, and I've been fuming about it for 2 days, it's all about dollar signs. It sucks. I miss the sport from the 70s or the 60s where we could actually get drivers who would get rides based on talent instead of just having to write a check. And I don't begrudge Hattori for their situation because they need to keep the doors open. But all around, this just sucks.
Well, the first thing I would say is I feel like there is far too much romanticizing the 60s, 70s, and 80s and the way it used to be. Motorsports has always been a rich folk sport, and I don't think it's really that novel of a concept of drivers who bring in cash and funding and who get opportunities that maybe others wouldn't. I think that in today's social media environment, in today's hyper-communicative era, we all have the means to be able to express that frustration about it a little more freely and loudly than we used to. But this isn't new. I mean, Johnny Benson, had this situation happen to him a little over a decade ago, and that's just in the truck series. And so this is not novel, but it's part of the sport. And it's not a truck series situation either. If you look at the K&N West series, Derek Thorne, he was brought in to drive a car that he won back in 2013, and his job was to win a championship because they wanted to sell the car in 2019. So this is racing. Perform well, and it doesn't really guarantee you nothing if you can't bring a check.
So let's draw this back to the start of the story for those who might be uninitiated or were living under a rock during the summer, because this conversation has started happening ever since what was it? Chicagoland in the middle of the summer was the first race, I think, that there were serious concerns about whether Brett and the 16 team would even be able to make it to the racetrack, and they kept finding ways to scrape sponsorship together. But I think you and I would agree, Matt, that that's not the way you want to operate a team. You don't want to be operating week to week. And now, at least based on the way it's been told to you, we're going to see here in a short amount of time shake out that a driver has brought funding to Hattori for 2019 that's going to allow them to continue to race, as Shiggy said. And as much as they appreciated what Brett has done, sometimes it's a business first.
Well, let's go back a little further, actually. You brought up Chicagoland, and that's the first time that I think it was made very public that the team was cash-strapped and needed to find something to continue operating at their current performance level. But they actually, when Hattori and Moffitt first agreed they were going to race together this year, it was actually a 4-race agreement. They were only going to run up until Martinsville and proceed from there. Like the original contract was for 4 races, and we'll proceed from there. And so after 4 races, they were third in the championship standings, and Hattori was able to get some of his partners from overseas to be able to buy into it and keep it going for another 4 or 5 races. And they finally put something together long term, but then certainly they got to Chicagoland, and they had to go public with the fact that they were struggling to keep the doors open. And so many people, I got to kind of nip this right here, a lot of people tried to suggest that, well, you know, you could keep going. You could start and park. You could do all these things to keep the door open. But the problem with that mentality is once you accept a lower price for your sponsorship, for your funding, once you show up to the racetrack with an unfunded truck, that devalues yourself. It devalues your operation. It devalues your enterprise. The moment that Hattori started to do that, the entire thing unravels. I think the best example is actually Roush Fenway. That's been the story now for the past decade. They kind of started to sell some of their programs short, and it's really put them kind of in a bind. So, you know, this is what this turns into, is that they had an operating budget. They wanted to compete for a championship, and that costs a certain amount of money, and if the driver can't provide that, they've got to find a driver who can.
Now, you mentioned that there's been a lot of romanticizing, I think was the word you used, of the sport and the financial climate. So I'm curious, and I'm sure a lot of other listeners are too. So spell out a little bit where you stand on this. I think we've all kind of accepted that this is a reality that happens sometimes in the sport, but where do you stand on this particular situation as it pertains to Brett and the 16 team?
You know, it is what it is. I mean, I tweeted immediately afterwards that you can't fault Hattori Racing. There was no proceeding with Brett unless he could find funding. It's very similar to Furniture Row Racing in the sense that Barney Visser was willing up to a certain point to invest his own money, his own resources into the team. They accomplished their goal. They won a championship. But that can only sustain itself for so long. So I'm sure whoever the driver becomes, and they're probably going to announce that next month unless someone can get to that story sooner, whoever that driver is, the funding that they brought is the only thing that would allow that team to continue operating at its current championship level performance. It's the only way that Jiggy can continue to let Scott Zipadelli and his team continue building trucks at the same level that they won a championship with. And oh, by the way, he looks at it as an investment because, yes, he put his own money into the team. He invested into it. And by winning the championship, with Brett, it allowed them to be able to sell that truck to whoever the new driver is or drivers are. And that's the business model. I brought up Derek Thorne, his K&N championship. 2013, he won the championship with Bob Brancotti, and that allowed Bob to be able to sell that car for the next couple of years. And the only reason why Derek Thorne was back in the K&N Pro Series West this year with Bob is the same thing happened. They couldn't sell the car, and they wanted to be able to let the world know that this is a championship-level car with the right driver. Derek went out and won a championship, and in a perfect world, they're going to be able to sell that car for 2019 because the world remembers, oh, well, this is a really good team and a really good car.
Mm-hmm. All right, so I don't want to dig into the next question I was going to ask because we're up against a break, but we're going to hold Matt and have much more on the Brett Moffitt Hattori Racing situation, as well as some of the other things that have been going on in the motorsport sphere as of today, including, I called it a Twitter war off the top. I guess it wasn't so much of a war, but it was certainly a lot of discussion that I know Matt will have no problem getting into the conversation on. So we'll step aside. We'll come back with more Motorsports Madness in just a couple of minutes. Hang tight. Don't go anywhere.
Do you love the sound of high-revving motors and the smell of burning rubber? Do you want to get your car sideways right at the ragged edge of control? If you've always wanted to try drifting or learn to improve your drifting skills, Summit Point Motorsports Park, the Mid-Atlantic's premier motorsports facility, has the expert instructors and the specialized track to teach you how to drift and the skills necessary to drift competitively. From skid pad to open sessions, Summit Point Motorsports Park has the safe and open environment that allows drifters of all skill levels, new to intermediate, to get sideways and smoking. With a focus on safety and the skill set necessary to drift competitively, Summit Point Motorsports Park's Drift Nirvana is just the thing for you. Call for your reservation today, 304-725-8444. Or for more information, go online, summitpoint-raceway.com, or you can email them at office@bsrinc.com. Drift Nirvana, getting you sideways the right way.
HMS Motorsport is the leader in motorsport safety. HMS serves the majority of Monster Energy NASCAR Cup, Xfinity, Camping World Truck, IndyCar, and IMSA WeatherTech teams, as well as countless SCCA and club-level racers and driving enthusiasts throughout North America. Featuring world-renowned brands like Schuberth helmets, Schroep belts, Adidas suits and shoes, Lifeline fire systems, and even Racecom radio kits, HMS has the right product for your type of racing and your budget. Their representatives are experts on only one thing, making your track driving as safe as possible. With locations in Mooresville, North Carolina, and Danvers, Massachusetts, the HMS staff is always ready to take the time to help you find the right product for your safety needs. Don't settle for second when it comes to motorsport safety. Stop in to HMS Motorsport. Visit them on their website at hmsmotorsport.com or send them a message on Facebook and tell them the folks from PMN Radio sent you.
What an awesome game. What's up with your car? I don't know. It won't start. How are we getting home? Chill. My parents signed me up for the roadside assistance from Lewis Meineke. It was free with my oil change. They'd come and get the car started or get us home and tow the car to the shop.
Good to know. With my driving, my parents never know what to expect.
When you join the Meineke Car Care Club with a $35 preferred service, you get 4 free months of roadside assistance, including tire change, battery jump, lockout service, towing, and more. Contact Lewis Meineke, located on Route 1, or call 827-2054.
When do you think of a plumber? Like most people, even if it's an emergency, you can be confident about who will arrive to help you. For quality and reliability, count on someone you can trust. Call on the plumbing services of Hague Quality Water of Maryland. Plumbing doesn't have to be an emergency. We handle all kinds of preventative maintenance too. Hague Quality Water of Maryland is family owned here in Annapolis since 1993. For a refreshing choice, call us at 888-84-WATER or visit us online.
COPD, chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, is a lung disease that robs people of their ability to breathe. As many as 24 million Americans suffer from COPD, also known as chronic bronchitis or emphysema, and half of them don't know they have the disease. If you or someone you love is over 35 and has smoked more than 100 cigarettes in their lifetime, visit driveforcopd.org and take the screener, then take that to your doctor. I'm Jeff Stoltz, and I drive for COPD.
Hi, I'm Brandon McReynolds, and you're listening to Race Talk on the Performance Motorsports Network. Now back to the show.
Allie's air drumming, and notice that in the first 2 segments of this show, we've had both the Snowball Derby champion as well as the quote-unquote driver coach for the Snowball Derby champion. Bring us out of commercial break, and, well, that lets me segue back into tonight's guest for the first portion of the show, who was at the Snowball Derby with yours truly. I'm Jacob Seelman, alongside Ali Boulay in the Race Chaser studios, joined by Cisco Scaramuzza, and from Short Track Scene and Auto Week, Matt Weaver, who is on the phone line with us right now. And we'll talk Derby in just a minute, but I had one more question for Matt to try to wrap up the Brett Moffitt scenario here. For those who haven't heard this week, Brett Moffitt and Hattori Racing going their separate ways for 2019. And we ran out of time before the break, but Matt, do you believe Brett Moffitt lands on his feet somewhere good in 2019, and that even though we're fussing about this and we hate it and it's disappointing right now, that this turns into a positive and he finds himself a good home?
You know, I'm not totally sure he finds something for 2019, just because if you look at the landscape in the 3 national tours, there's not a lot out there. There's not anything in the Truck Series and the Xfinity Series and the Cup Series that wouldn't require bringing funding. I mean, a lot of people keep saying, oh, well, Dale Jr. needs to put him in the 9. And I think Dale Jr. said on his podcast once that he's not the ride fairy. You know, he has to be able to fund it too. I mean, he's having to watch his friend and longtime driver Elliott Sadler walk away, mostly because his sponsor decided that this year was the end. Elliott likes to say that the time is right, family, friends, all that stuff, and certainly that's a part of it. But this costs so much money, and so when you look at the teams that are out there, you know, maybe if they came to this conclusion that they couldn't continue on with a Tory, maybe they could have landed at GMS with the ride that John Hunter Nemechek landed at today. But this late in the year, you know, the pickings are scarce, and I can tell you that the timing of this story coming out was not of the most pleasant to the Hattori folks. They wanted to get through the banquet this weekend and then be able to let Brett turn his attention to 2019. But they kind of felt like they've got to get this news out right now because they've got to let the world know they're looking. They're free agents, and you know, you just can't afford to get rid of before Christmas and New Year's to let the world know that you're a free agent and looking. Mm-hmm. So with all that said, all that in mind, you look at the cars that are available, he's just got to find something and get the most out of it. I talked to Denny Hamlin for the story because Denny and Brett are really good friends. And Denny said he's got to find some way to stay in NASCAR. He can't do what Ryan Preece did and go run modifieds or late models or something like that. He's got to stay on TV. He's got to do what Ross Chastain did, which is get the most out of a mid-tier car. And hopefully that'll turn into something good for 2020.
All right, so now let's shift the attention away from the NASCAR National Series a bit to the event that has held a place in your heart for a long time, and you have quickly taught it to hold a special place in my heart as well, because we were both down in Pensacola, Florida for the Snowball Derby last weekend, which appropriately was won by the driver who spoke right after our first commercial tonight. Noah Gragson picking up the victory at Five Flags Speedway after a late race restart where he outdueled his now former KBM teammate Harrison Burton. But what spoke to me actually wasn't even the fact that Noah won, but it was actually the story that you had on Short Track Scene, Matt, yesterday, Wednesday of this week, for those who are listening to us on demand. But you got a chance to talk with Noah and really get some extra perspective that perhaps a lot of people who have watched him this year maybe haven't had before, because this is not the punk kid that some people have accused Noah of being over the past couple of years. This is a driver who gets it. This is a driver who wants to give back as much as he wants to stay in the sport. And I think you and I both got a lot out of him over the course of 4 or 5 days down in the Florida Panhandle, and it was really refreshing.
No, I feel like I've now covered Noah and gotten to know him on a more human level, not just so much a race car driver level, for so many years now that I get a different perspective than a lot of fans do watching on TV. And I think that his public persona is a part of who he really is. He is a bit of a goofball. He's irreverent. He's a bit of an odd duck. He's a weird kid. He's got some nuances that are hard for some people to understand because he's got a personality, and we've seen that on display in a variety of ways. And he said it to me in that interview, and I totally sympathize with him, that he believes that people don't take him seriously. People don't respect him, and there's a subset of the motorsports fandom, whether it's on Twitter, on Reddit, whatever social platform you're on, there is a portion of the NASCAR audience that they just don't get the dude. And I think a lot of that is because they haven't been able to interact with him on a human level. And sometimes it's really hard to get a proper read on someone through just TV. And sometimes it's accurate, sometimes not so much. But I think that there were several instances during the course of this entire year that I wish that some fans could have had the same experiences interacting with him that I do. So the main thing that I wanted to point out in the story was, and after talking to Noah, is that this is a guy that cares tremendously about the health of the sport. When he's not running his truck this year, he spent several weekends with Carson Hocevar, who's one of his best friends, and he helped him with pit stops. He was the tire guy. He runs his own late model stuff out west. He messaged me on Thursday, and this is the story I'll share with the listeners. He messaged me on Thursday and said, "Come find me." He was listening on to the conversation, reading on Twitter about this conversation with the Snowball Derby car count being down and the big debate with 5-Star and AR, and he just wanted to bounce some ideas off me. And it turned into about a 35, 40-minute conversation sitting on pit road, the wall of pit road, talking about the state of the sport. And this is a guy that he gets it. He's smart. He has ideas. Maybe some of them are wacky and harebrained, but it's one thing to have people that complain about the state of the industry, and it's another to be a guy that brings ideas to the table. And yes, he is every bit the goofball, irreverent doof that he can be on television. Pensacola, he's over there, having fun, goofing off with Carson. He's making fun of Rafael Lessard's French accent. That's a real part of him. But he's also a guy that takes racing seriously, cares about its health beyond just his own deal. And the thing is, he's got a Junior Motorsports Xfinity Series program set up for next year. He shouldn't have to care about why the car count is down for the Snowball Derby. He's probably not going to run a super late model race for the foreseeable future. But he wanted to sit down and have a 40-minute conversation on Thursday about the state of the sport and what things need to be done to improve it and get the car counts up or to get people to care. And that's really rare in my experiences from a 20-year-old who typically only cares about making sure their deal is set up, winning races, going home. Mm-hmm. So he's a really interesting person, but he's a really candid, likable, and big-picture thinker, and I don't think enough people give him credit for that.
So you mentioned the car count being down. Obviously, we talk about Noah winning the race on a late dash, but what were your takeaways from this year's Derby? Because I know we could spend this entire show talking about the Derby, I feel like, just because there were so many intricate storylines. But what were some of your big takeaways from this year's race?
Well, that's always a tough question because, I think sometimes my weakness with the Snowball Derby is that it is my favorite race of the year, and it sometimes takes me a while to have a critical assessment of the race because I love that race so much, and sometimes it takes me a week or two to sit back and get out of the moment to kind of analyze it properly. But no, the key takeaways for me, maybe more as a racing fan first and foremost than as a journalist or a writer or a pundit or whatever you want to call them, is that the race is still very healthy. We talked a lot about the car counts, and that is something that needs to be addressed. That's not a Derby-specific problem. 24 cars showed up to the All-American 400 a couple of weeks prior. But the entry list was still top-heavy. I felt like once you get through qualifying, the 36 cars that made the main event, any of them, under the right circumstances, setup, scenario, could win that race. Fans still showing up. I just feel like the late model industry has to make some decisions here soon to be able to make sure that the car count doesn't continue to drop, and maybe even rise a little bit. Because Johnny Van Doren told me at Nashville that if we continue doing the things that we're doing now as a discipline, as an industry, we're going to become club racing in the sense that 15 to 20 drivers are going to pull together to come up with a purse, and they're going to race in front of 300 family and friends, and that's a pretty damning statement. One of the smartest guys in the room, if you will.
Mm-hmm. So, real quickly, this race largely, I felt like, was dominated by the young guys. You had Noah win the race. Rafi Lessard was impressive, to say the least, in potentially his last ride for Kyle Busch Motorsports. Harrison Burton was up there. Ty Majeski led for much of the final third of the race and was chasing down Noah Gragson at the finish. And as I feel like we've talked about on this show a bunch, it's just another continuation of the youth movement that is not just alive and well in NASCAR, but it's been alive and well in short track racing and continues to show that. We're going to have one more segment coming up with Matt on the other side of a commercial break, where we'll dig into some of the news of the week that's broken at the PRI Trade Show and all that fun stuff. He actually mentioned one of the big stories that we'll talk about in our next segment, John Hunter Nemechek to GMS Racing. So that and more, as Allie goes, les gasp. That and more coming up right after this on Motorsports Madness. Stick around.
Everywhere you go, you hear it, and you see it. It's coming at you through your phone, your tablet, and your computer. It's broadcast from your favorite radio station, TV networks, and cable companies. It's in the stadiums, the arenas, the ballparks. It screams for your attention at the mall. It's interactive on Main Street. It's even coming at you from the gas pump at the nearby convenience store. What is it? It's digital content. It's digital content. It's digital content. Somebody has to create it. Somebody has to manage it. So whether your dream is to write it, design it, create it, call it, produce it, voice it, host it, light it, shoot it, switch it, record it, color correct it, edit it, code it, repurpose it, tweet it, blog it, post it, compress it, upload it, replay it, or make sure it gets to where it's got to go when it's got to get there in the format it's got to be in, you need to attend Carolina School of Broadcasting. The skills you will learn, the experience you will get, and the connections you will make at Carolina School of Broadcasting will open the doors to the career you want in digital content creation and digital content management. Call or come by today. Click csbradiotv.edu.
Parents, your son or daughter has had their license for a while now, but you want to make sure they're prepared for any situation they may face on the road. High school driver's ed doesn't teach them to drive defensively. They need to be prepared for any highway emergency. For less than a month's insurance, and a whole lot less, BSR instructors at Summit Point Motorsports Park in nearby Summit Point, West Virginia, will teach your son or daughter how to respond instantly and positively to unexpected situations on the road. BSR's specialized accident avoidance training teaches swerve to avoid maneuvers at highway speed, ocular driving, which focuses driving attention on ways to avoid accidents, vehicle dynamics and feedback, skid control and skid recovery, threshold braking on straights and progressive braking on curves, and off-road recovery techniques. This is stuff driver's ed simply doesn't teach. So call BSR today, 304-725-8444. Give your kid the skill set needed to drive safely and responsibly on the highway. That's 304-725-8444.
This is a test to find out if you know it all when it comes to children. Name one of the leading killers of U.S. children age 1 to 13. What's the best way to protect children in a car crash? At what age and size should a child start using a booster seat?
Don't assume you know it all when it comes to car seats for your child. Go to safercar.gov/the-right-seat and know for sure. Brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the Ad Council.
I'm Kaz Gralla, and you're listening to Race Talk on the Performance Motorsports Network.
Welcome back to Motorsports Madness. Jacob Seelman, Ali Boulay, Cisco Scaramouza, who is going to come out of his box in just a second, and joined on the phone by Matt Weaver from Auto Week and Short Track Scene, and we're going to get Cisco in the box. Hi, Cisco. You are alive. We promised the listeners that you're alive. Well, he's alive, but Randy forgot to turn his microphone on.
No, I'm on. I'm on.
Okay.
I'm I'm sort of alive. Finals is trying very hard not to make me alive,
Aw.
but we'll see how we do.
All right, so before I bring Matt back into the conversation with the other news item that he brought up a minute ago, I want to actually pitch it to you first, Cisco, since we've kind of had you muzzled for a little bit. But broken earlier this afternoon, John Hunter Nemechek to GMS Racing full-time in 2019. Your first thoughts?
My first thoughts was, oh boy, Twitter's going to light up after this, after what we're going to be talking to Matt about here, because that was a whole thing. But I'm honestly not that surprised. I figured it would be him or him, really, who was pegged to go into that role. That just kind of fit very well, Jacob.
It does, to me, seem like a good fit. And now we'll bring Matt Weaver back into the conversation, and this will kind of dovetail off into the remainder of the conversation that we want to have here during this segment. But your thoughts on John Hunter first, because I think we all knew that when Chip Ganassi was talking about the potential of a second car at Phoenix after he announced Ross Chastain to the 42, that I think we all kind of knew that that was a pipe dream, that Chip was saying that, hoping that maybe he could shake something out of the weeds. But I love this. I love everything about this, honestly, because to me it feels like a gritty team and a gritty driver. I mean, GMS has built themselves up in, I don't want to say a lot of the same way that John Hunter did, but certainly both sides have scratched and clawed at different points to get to where they're at. So it seems like a good match.
Yeah, I would say it is. They had a very similar spirit about them, grit, as you put it. I think it was a logical fit. I mean, if you look at the drivers who are out there who brought some degree of funding, but also brought a pedigree and brought results. If you look at what John Hunter has done across late models, truck series, winning the Xfinity series this year. Plus, they've gotten to know him because he's been running in the Space Series this year already. So they've had a lot of opportunities to kind of mingle and see if he would be a good fit there. I think there are a lot of similarities in all the good ways between Spencer Gallagher, who is going to very much spearhead program now along with Mike Dean. I think John Hunter is just a good thematic fit. I think he's going to have pretty good success there. Spencer started to adapt to the series in the car before his unfortunate incident after Talladega. But I think John Hunter is way more experienced. He got started in a stock car way sooner than Spencer did, and I think you're going to see that car immediately be a race-winning, contending car and a championship contending car with John Hunter. So it was a good signing, good for GMS and good for John Hunter.
So we mentioned, or rather Cisco did, that Twitter kind of lit up a little bit because this all goes back about a month or so to a story from frontstretch.com that Dustin Albino wrote and basically called the shot before John Hunter 100% knew there was a shot to be called. You can read into that what you will, but the fact of the matter is he called it right. And then this spun off into a whole bunch of other discussions that you and Jenna Fryer and some fans had that, if nothing else, I liked some of the points that you brought up, but then again, it's some of the same points that I feel like those of us at this radio table have had for a little while that we still have to be concerned about. There is a thinning of the media crowd that is a little bit concerning in all this.
Well, there's a couple of things that I feel like we need to address here. So let's do this bullet point style. First and foremost, I've always said this week, notwithstanding, that I don't see myself as a breaking news guy, just because the breaking news game is so challenging in 2018 or almost 2019. Because even if you pull all the pieces together, connect the dots, you have the story. For the most part, teams will never confirm it because they want to be able to do the media blitz. They want to be able to do it on their social. They want to be able to do what Kurt Busch and Ganassi did, where you've got the video. And
which
so
was
even
very cool, by the way. Sorry.
Oh, absolutely. It was well done. The guys there do a great job. No, you're good. So they want to be able to do it that way. So even if you have all the facts, you're just not going to get a confirmation. So the teams are almost complicit in this attitude towards reporters too, and it's so frustrating because even if you do everything you're supposed to do, you get your sources, they'll still act like you don't have it right. And so the moment that John Hunter Nemechek said that, you know more than I do, apparently, I had kind of digging around that too, and I just couldn't be able to source it to the extent that Dustin felt like he did and then reported. So I knew he was going there, and I'm like, it's going to come back and bite you, kid. And so the moment that they made it official today, I think a bunch of people went back and turned that into a moment, Twitter moment. But it's a moment that needed to be discussed, because here's the deal. I feel like those of us in the media, all of us, everyone here in this conversation, we have a symbiotic relationship with the teams and the drivers. We need them. We need them for access. We need them to be able to tell stories, captivating stories. We're both educators and entertainers. I've always said that we're here to entertain our readers, our listeners, but also to educate and make sure that the fans are smartened up. But the teams also need us, because without us to be their microphone, to be their voices, they're going to find it to be a lot more challenging to get their information out. Not as much as before. Certainly the advent of social media has helped them and minimize their need for us. But I feel like those of us who are smart enough and creative enough, a guy like Gluck, who has turned it up into a multimedia machine, he still has a lot of credibility. Those of us, we all have credibility. We all have our outlets and our perspectives. They need us. And so when teams or drivers treat us like fake news when we had it completely right, all that they're doing is undermining their own avenues to be able to get information, to disseminate their opinions and their perspectives and their feelings post-race or whatever. And so even if they've got an axe to grind in the moment, they don't realize big picture damage they're doing to the media center. Because if in moments like this, or Daniel Suarez calling out a Motorsports story because he felt like his quotes were taken out of context, and I believe that was a Jim story, and him is too good. He broke a story earlier this year. I don't think that was taken out of context. You just have to be very careful not to undermine the people that you rely on to get your message out, because we're all in this together. The late Jim Hunter used to say that we're all eating the same pot, and so we all have our different obligations and we all have our different duties, but we're all eating out of the same pot. We have to make sure that we're all kind of working not to discredit both of our perspectives, because again, the health of the sport is dependent on each side.
Mm-hmm. You actually brought up something in this whole conversation that really stuck out to me from SiriusXM Speedway with Dave Moody, that he had mentioned recently, to kind of imagine, if you will, a time in which the only way we get our information about NASCAR, or, insert motorsport genre here, is TV, the AP, or the wire service, which is one of those things that you kind of laugh at, and then for those of us in the sport, you sit back and think about that a little deeper and go, shoot, if we're not careful, this could actually happen. It was one of those it was one of those sobering moments where I thought to myself, okay, as terrifying as that thought is, it's not totally without merit.
No, it's not that far off. There are so many times where I've had fans tell me that, well, what do we need you for? I get everything that I need from Fox. And that just baffles me, because I don't think the average fan realizes that television are the sanctioning body's partners. They have their own integrity. I'm not going to question their integrity by any means, but they're an affiliate. They are on the same team, and they work together to craft the message to varying degrees. And I think your I don't want to say lowest common denominator, but to a degree, your lowest common denominator, or your average fan, doesn't recognize that the independent media have no such obligation. They have no obligations to support sanctioning bodies, teams, drivers, what have you. But that's also a benefit, because you know what you're getting from them, from your Glucks, from your Pockris, which is why it's so important that Bob gets a job. From Nate, from Dustin, from Jim, from Jenna. Pick your favorite reporter. that is completely unbiased, and that has extreme value. And I just wish there was a better way for people to communicate to fans how important our roles are, because we provide something completely independent from NASCAR's partners.
I'm going to throw you one more bullet point here on the news front that we brought up briefly earlier about the, I'll call it the worst kept secret in the garage area, but we finally get the confirmation after months that Kurt Busch is going to CGR. What's your outlook for 19 with the one car?
You know, I think it could be one last hurrah for Kurt. I think that this is Kurt's 20th season, and that was a really important number to Kurt. But I think Kurt's looking bigger picture beyond just NASCAR. You know, he left the door open that if he has a really good season the coming year, that maybe it could turn into a multi-year agreement. Monster does things in year-to-year iterations, so it's hard to kind of forecast beyond 2020. But I think what Kurt's trying to set himself up to do is, we all know that Kurt likes to race anything he can. Chip Ganassi has a very successful IndyCar program. He wants to return to the Indy 500, get to facilitate that. Kurt wants to do more sports car racing. I think he wants to do the Rolex. I think he wants to do Le Mans, and Chip can facilitate that too. So I think this goes way larger than just his NASCAR aspirations. He wants to win one more championship. He wants to win a couple more of the marquee races. He believes that Matt McCall wasn't being spotlighted the way that he could have been with Jamie McMurray, and he believes that he's going to kind of unlock the potential out of Matt McCall, who everyone believes is a underrated crew chief. Remember that RCR actually sued Ganassi over the rights to retain Matt McCall a couple of years ago. So Kurt is banking on Matt McCall to be able to lead him to a championship, and like I said, this is a bigger picture for Kurt too. Kurt's thinking about the next 5-10 years of his racing career beyond NASCAR.
Yes or no? You mentioned that this is bigger than just NASCAR for Kurt. Do you see him going back to the